regardless, every marketer should be thinking in terms of AI native. Anything that is like the slightest bit repetitive, how can AI make this faster? Anything, even creative, how can I make this better with AI? This idea of just like any problem you have now, it's just like my mind has been retrained to just think, how can I use AI for this?
Welcome to the AI-powered inbox, where we share top tips, use cases, and news at the intersection of AI and lifecycle marketing. I'm your host. My name is Adam Bianco, the founder and chief strategist at Off Trail Marketing. With me on today's show is Luke Kline, founding marketer at Hightouch and author of Lifecycle Leaders. Luke, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Love the work you've been doing and excited to be here.
Yeah, really excited to have you on. We got all kinds of things to talk about. On today's show, we are going to talk about what's on the minds of those lifecycle leaders, including like some top trends, what's working, AI agents, and the future of lifecycle marketing. We got like a breaking, philosophy that we're talking about today. Is that right?
I don't know. We will see. The best term I can use from all the conversations I've had and what folks are saying to summarize what's happening right now.
All right. Well, we're going to get into all of that. So stick around. But before we do, Luke, just like tell us your background, how you got into it, and how you ended up being the founding marketer at Hightouch, which sounds very fancy, by the way.
Yeah, it's a really funny story. So about, I guess, 5 years ago, I was working for a small startup, a consultancy firm, and we were helping folks basically do a lot of data engineering work. So when Snowflake and Databricks were really small, before, they were anywhere near the size they are now, nobody knew how to like migrate to those platforms off of hardware. So that company, we specialized in that. It got acquired, and I was reading the writing on the wall, looking for a new role. I mean, I had got introduced to Tejas, who's the CEO of one of the CEOs of Hightouch at the time through that company, and I thought the technology that they were building was really cool. Nobody was moving data out of the warehouse; everyone was moving data into the warehouse, and the idea that you could build audiences and run all these really personalized marketing campaigns. It was just really cool. It really excited me as a marketer, being able to actually use and activate data. So Tejas reached out to me to do sales. I had just moved out of sales. I'm not good at sales. I actually hated sales, but I was like, well, I should probably take this interview. It's a free interview, and I can pretend to be interested in sales, and maybe there will be another role that opened up for me. So I take this interview, pretend to be interested in sales, give all of the right answers that they were looking for. And then I interview after with the head of sales, and I just like halfway through the interview was like, I just can't do a sales role. There's no way. I just can't do it. So I tell him, I was like, his name's Thomas Foley, great guy. I say, I can't do sales. I'm going to be a horrible salesperson. If you just hire me for anything else marketing related. So he goes back to Tejas and is like, do not hire this guy for sales. It's going to be a terrible, terrible choice. So
That was a risky move. I mean, I appreciate your honesty, respect your honesty, because I'm the same way when it comes like sales and marketing. One is like the evil empire, and the other one's like, yeah, we're
yeah,
cool. We do some cool things.
yeah, exactly. But I had a job at the time, so you have a lot more leverage to negotiate from when you have a job versus if you don't. The
For sure.
conversation would have been completely different if I didn't have income coming in. Yeah, but long story short, they ended up hiring me for marketing. I basically just hounded them just pestered them for the next several months of like, hey, do y'all have a job for me? And back then it was like probably less than 20 people. Nobody cared about Hightouch. Nobody wanted to work for, that company. So if some guy is just like annoying you and pestering your inbox, it's like, man, maybe we should hire him. So yeah, that's that's how I ended up at Hightouch. And then suddenly I looked up 5 years later, and we just crossed 100 million annual recurring revenue. Yeah, it's just wild, the journey and trajectory of the company. Redefined the industry, invented the composable CDP, a lot of work around agentic marketing, really just like redefining what marketing is and how it works. I mean, just giving marketers superpowers, really. That's how I define Hightouch. It's the only platform you can go into and really solve the most complicated personalization use cases you can think of, everything from your loyalty programs to your product usage emails to, a push notification at the perfect time, targeting, ads for, people who lapsed and you want to win back, like anything you can think of, all that's possible in Hightouch.
Which all sounds amazing. But what is a composable CDP? See, that sounds like you had
Great
your sales
question.
hat on for a second. So
Yeah.
what's layman terms? What does that mean for those who aren't familiar?
So the easiest way I like to describe the composable CDP is you think about a traditional CDP like a Segment or Salesforce and Adobe. All of those vendors, you have to bring the data to them. Bring us your data and we'll give you all of the capabilities of a CDP, audience building, identity resolution, event collection. One of the things that Hightouch did that really, we really pioneered and created is this idea of the composable CDP, which is instead of you bringing the data to us, we just bring the CDP to you, which means all of your data, for the most part, for most companies, already lives somewhere in a Snowflake or a Databricks, a data warehouse, some sort of data platform. We sit as a composable layer on top of that, which means we don't actually store any data. We just build and work around everything you already have. So all of your loyalty data, all of your in-store data, everything you know about the customer, we allow you to build audiences on top of that because we just plug right into your existing data infrastructure. And what's really cool about, at least for me as a marketer, it's, very few companies can like make that claim of, hey, if you hate high touch tomorrow, you can rip us out. You still own all of your data underneath. Traditional CDPs can't make that claim, but High Touch can because we invented the technology. And a lot of folks offer like warehouse native integrations and stuff now, but High Touch was built that way from day one. Like we invented the technology. So every company now that you see, Salesforce, Adobe, saying they have integrations and things with Snowflake, that's because the whole industry shifted because of what we built. And they were forced to move that way. So it's really exciting and better for everyone all around the board now. But yeah, that's how I just find it is we bring all of the capabilities of a CDP to you and we don't lock you into any of it.
That sounds really nice. And you've been doing that for years. But I feel like I've got to know you over the last year because you've been shifting in terms of building out what is now called Lifecycle Leaders.
Mhm.
And I've been seeing your content all on LinkedIn. So tell us about what Lifecycle Leaders is all about and like what you've been up to.
Yeah. And what's really funny is I'm not actually a lifecycle marketer. Like most people don't realize that. I consider myself kind of a curator and editor for the community and all the awesome work that the actual practitioners and people breaking their backs every week and sweating over, the messages are doing. But yeah, lifecycle leaders is really born out of this idea of you think about any personalized experience you see on the website or anywhere, like any channel, your email, your phone, anything. All of the work to like make that experience possible never gets to see the light of day. The CMO, the CEO, the main question they ask at the end of the day is, what were the signups off of that? What were the conversions off of that? What was the incremental revenue off of that? And all of the work to build the audiences, all of the work to set up the orchestration logic, all of the work that goes into designing the campaign, the nitty gritty kind of like nerdy tactical stuff that lifecycle marketers live and breathe every day, that doesn't get to see the light of day. So the whole purpose of lifecycle leaders is to basically show the 90% of the work it takes to deliver, that last 10% and last mile that you see. And it was funny because as a marketer, I was really curious about that. We work with a lot of lifecycle teams. So folks were asking us like, how are other teams thinking about this? What are they doing? So like any good marketer, I just started doing research. I couldn't find anything. It's like, how does a loyalty program actually work? How does somebody, build out this campaign? What are they actually sending? Why are they making the decisions the way they do it? There was like nothing out there that existed. There's only the only thing I could find, and I love him. FFAM, he does like these giant Figma board breakdowns, and those were really cool. And I was like, this is awesome. I want to do more stuff like that. So I'd say he was a large part of the inspiration. And then we really tried to put our own spin on it. Like I can't do at all what Fee does. So like, yeah, we interview folks now. We share Claude skills, that people are deploying and using all the time. We run these wild experiments. Like I just signed up recently for Kalshi and Polymarket, and I analyzed what their onboarding flow looks like for the next 30 days. So every push notification they send, every email, if you want to know what that is, like just read those breakdowns. It's all in there.
Yeah. So let's actually talk about that. You've been analyzing programs for the last year or so, maybe more, maybe going back years at this point, but really been analyzing over the past year. You've looked at programs from Starbucks to Kalshi. What are brands doing well? And it's like, where are there still opportunities? What are like kind of the trends that you see?
Yeah, it's so interesting because after doing like all these journey breakdowns, like you would think, well, they're probably kind of the same. It's just life cycle marketing. But I try to go into every one of them with like no presuppositions of what I think they're doing or what it should look like. And when you do that, it really allows you to uncover like the actual rich insights of what's in there. And what's really interesting that I find is that the actual life cycle program is entirely, which is not a huge surprise, entirely like dictated by, the business goals that are set at a high level. So what's interesting is like Kalshi and Polymarket, for example, functionally the exact same product, a prediction platform where I don't know what the language is, but you make bets.
Don't
And
say bets. You make you, I don't know the right. One of them the government likes. One of them the government doesn't like. Yeah, they're the prediction markets, right?
fascinating because like they've grown so much. I think Kalshi has gone from like I forget what the exact stat is. It's in the article I wrote, but like 1 million to 5 million users or something crazy in the last year. So it's like, well, what are they doing from a to capture the first deposit? Because that's probably the main use case for them is they need people to put money into the platform to trade. That's the word. And the same for Polymarket. So it's like, well, I bet they're doing the same thing for a life cycle. They're not at all. Polymarket runs a really high frequency push notification program. And maybe Kalshi does too, but I didn't experience any of that when I signed up. And what's interesting back to the leadership standpoint is Kalshi is like a government, regulated and approved exchange versus Polymarket is not. They're kind of crypto backed. And that slight framing there like changes everything for how the companies run because Kalshi spent like years getting approved. So all of the language, everything in their onboarding program is very much like think like big fintech, not at all using like this is what you could win. And that Polymarket's whole program is built around upside versus Kalshi's whole program is built around trust and security. Like just put money into the platform, you get an APY back. And they have like a specific onboarding sequence. Polymarket doesn't have any sort of onboarding. They just go straight into this newsletter type format,
Interesting.
which is built to like reinforce, how folks are using the app. So like they have this module in their email where they pick one user out of their platform and they'll show like wild winnings that person got from a trade, like, $1.5 million on, this trade that probably most people missed.
Yeah, they show the one person who won, not the like millions of people who did not win on that one prediction on that one bet.
I've not actually, it's funny, really used either of the platforms. I was just looking at them from an onboarding standpoint. I stay clear.
Me as well, to be honest. I feel like it's one of those things, if I start dabbling into that, it would be difficult for me to like stop dabbling into
Like
that
I'm a
to
huge
certain degree.
tennis guy. I just don't want to open that door for myself.
Yeah, I was a big gamer back in the day, and I'm like, when I get into something, I get into it. So I'm like, I'm just gonna like not download it and just go from there, and I don't feel like I'm missing out. What I find interesting is that these two very like they're rivals. They're generally doing the same thing, to your point, and one is taking that fintech approach, while the other one's taking more of
Like a social
the like
media.
casino, bet MGM, FanDuel kind of element of like more of the betting upside. And this all stems back to the business goals
Mhm.
of it. And then the brand itself, which I don't, from my standpoint, when I work with clients, everything always kind of like ties back to those business goals. Cause you might have a brand that is really focused on, we want to get onboarding right. This is the stage of or we're really trying to drive acquisition. So this is the stage where they're at on the company. But when you look at something like Starbucks, which is obviously a very mature company and life cycle program, they're bringing new people in, but more important, they're trying to engage the folks they already have. They have like the largest loyalty program around with 30 plus million
Mhm.
folks. So like those very different experiences and very like different objectives to it all.
Yeah. And most people don't realize this. Like Starbucks is a great example. Also another one I looked at. But they basically invented like one of the earliest loyalty programs. Like when the iOS store was launched in, I forget, 2008, I think their app went live in 2009. So like they have been running this for longer than everyone. And like their whole program is built around, seasons and flavors and driving, basically becoming your morning routine of
Mhm.
like, your coffee is ready. They already know what you're thinking and what you want before you've purchased it. And they make that as easy as possible. And they tie in, like they just revamped their whole loyalty program. And consumers have been loving it. Like the best programs I see, they nail the delivering value for the brand in the terms of revenue or engagement or whatever that looks like. Life cycle of being the comms channel with your customers, and it also delivers value for the end user. And you think about what marketing is supposed to do fundamentally is eliminate friction for the customer, make the decision process easier. Like, something as simple as a one-click checkout on Amazon. Customers, love that. I don't want to go through all of this flow, save my information, send me, instead of telling me I abandoned my cart, send me a notification that says, hey, if you don't order in the next 4 hours, it won't be here in time for Christmas. That stuff is really valuable to me as a consumer, but not just sending me, you did this type of action, actually taking the event data and tying that into ways to deliver more value for your customer. If you know that this product sells out, Airbnb does this, really popular places, that you would book, they know the time of year, like when this gets booked out and like when you need to, I can't think of the right word for it, but book the location so they can say, hey, if you don't book now, it'll probably be sold out.
Yeah, everything that drives more customer value is a win. You are trying to understand like the jobs to be done of that consumer, of your user, and putting their needs first ahead of the brand. But oftentimes those two things
They're not at
go
odds
hand.
as much as people think.
Yeah. And in terms of best practices and trends, you just like alluded to the fact that like life cycle and product really do need to go
Hmm.
hand in hand of what they're experiencing outside the product and sometimes even inside the product if you're doing in-app messages or if you're working with a SaaS platform in the
Hmm.
product itself. But those two things in terms of the product experience internally and externally need to match up to be a really true cohesive experience.
Yeah, and this is where I see like a lot of life cycle programs fall short. Like most people don't realize I look at life cycle programs all the time, and there's a lot of things I don't always publish. I'm not throwing anyone under the bus here or trying to do anything like that. But the best programs I see, it's like the product teams and the life cycle teams are clearly talking to each other. The emails and the messages, they don't feel like this just new thing you've never seen before. Like I'll use Starbucks again because they're a great example. It's like even the tiniest elements for how the email is designed. It's like it perfectly mirrors the in-app experience. So that if you open an email on your phone, you click it and it takes you to the app. It's like those two things are perfectly bridged together. And sometimes it's not the case at all. It's like you get an email from a retailer and it's just this giant banner of like 100,000 products in it, and then you go to the website and it's another giant banner of 100,000 products. And, the consumer probably cares about maybe one category on there. And, that data is available and ready to be used. And the lifecycle team knows this too, most of the time. Every lifecycle team, like they know exactly what to do. It's just that they don't have the data to typically do it. They don't have, the inventory data. They don't have, all of those, like outside of the basic event and clickstream type stuff. So like you as a consumer, what often it feels like is the brand is just telling you what you did instead of helping you. It's just you viewed this thing. Here's some more recommendations for something you might like or that type of stuff.
It's I I've done a deep dive into annual recaps over the last couple of years. I've been really fascinated by what Spotify does and with their Spotify Wrapped, and they do it very well. But there's also other brands that do it well,
Hmm.
and a couple that stick out. All Trails, Goodreads are just right at the top of the list. And what you see in that email is
Hmm.
extremely personalized to you. They
Hmm.
show you what you've done throughout the year, and they do this also like on a monthly basis at times in certain programs too. But when you click into that and you experience then like an enhanced version of the product, that is just I think those two functions really working in concert with each other.
Hmm. And there's so many interesting ways you can use data to tell that type of story. Like Spotify Wrapped is such an interesting one because December comes around, and I think like every life cycle marketing team feels this pain of like Wrapped is here. What's your Wrapped campaign going to be? And they just like build this campaign, and then suddenly it's just like all of this data the consumer doesn't care about. And it's like the real question you should be asking is Wrapped is here. What's something interesting and valuable you should do for your customer? That might have nothing to do with product usage data at all. Drew Price, who actually was one of the pioneers for product usage emails, he invented the Grammarly Insights emails, which is kind of the poster child that folks look at. Like Grammarly still runs those today. But one of the things he said is when he was building that is like, how do you zig when everyone else is zagging, or how do you zag when everyone else is zigging? And so often we get stuck in this like monkey see, monkey do mentality, and we don't actually pause to think, does this make sense for the customer? There's a reason your bank probably doesn't say you spent XYZ on fast food this year. I probably don't want to know that.
And to your point, Spotify using them as the OG of it all, they do something unique every single year. I think last year was like your personas and how they had changed throughout the year. It was something that it wasn't just listening data that they of course share, but they like how can they spin this
Mhm.
data and tell a story with it that is unique and different versus everybody else.
And there's an important nuance there too, because one of the things people don't realize is like not all products are created equal. Music is like deeply emotional and tied to your being. So the data around it is inherently interesting to you. Funny enough, I'm not actually a Spotify music guy. I use Apple Music. And every time at the end of the year, I'm sad because I don't get to participate in Spotify Wrapped, which I don't know, maybe I need to change that. It's more so I just don't want to move all of my playlists. They need like a
Come on,
migration button.
come on over. I made the switch a couple of years ago. Wrapped wasn't the main driver, but it definitely was part of the consideration. Let's just say
Yeah.
that. It was kind of a pain to move, but we did it, and I've been enjoying Spotify since.
Yeah. I wonder if Claude could help me with that.
It probably can. I think actually Apple did the reverse. They made some tool to make it really easy to migrate from Spotify to Apple. So I'd be curious if Spotify has done the
I've
one up
never looked into this.
and reversed it. I did use I used a third-party conversion tool. I actually paid like $5 or $10 for it, and it did an okay job, but it definitely took a while to kind of repair and fix some things. Okay, so that aside, so annual recaps, of course, that's like almost like its own topic unto itself. You see that going well, pairing life cycle and product and all these things, but it seems like one of the things that people are doing more, or at least I hear about it more and see about it more on LinkedIn, is of course AI and like AI agents, and how do you
Mhm.
leverage those within your life cycle program. So you've been chatting with folks in terms of how they're leveraging it, or at least how they think they're leveraging it.
Mhm.
Are like, what's going on? Are we behind if we're not using it? Like, where does things stand right now?
Yeah, I think if you're on LinkedIn at all or social media at all, you definitely, feel that as a knowledge worker of, I'm behind. Every single day you open up your feed and it's like, I built this and it solves cancer. That's kind of how it feels. But when you actually talk to the folks like in the weeds and doing the work, some folks are a lot more ahead than they think they are and they think they're behind. Other folks, it's like they're just starting to dip their toes in it. And I just wrote up a full piece on this recently, but I've talked to probably more lifecycle marketers over the last year than most people in the space. And there's kind of like three buckets of folks I see. Bucket one is like the folks who are feeling kind of overwhelmed and just starting to dip their toes in the water with AI. It's just like they're so debilitated because there's so many use cases and things they can do. They're just trying to figure out where to start.
Yeah. And
Bucket two,
we were all that at some point. Some of us are here now.
yeah,
Some of us were there last year, 2 years ago. So we all got to cross that chasm at some point.
yeah, and it's also like an organizational thing. It's like some folks literally don't have permission to use the tools. I was talking to a huge enterprise company a while back, and like Claude is just banned for them. So there's also that type of stuff. Phase two is the folks who are starting to speed up individual components of the workflow. So we can generate more copy now. We can do more subject lines. We can build our HTML faster. All of these components of what it takes to get a campaign live. And then the minority, because I think we're very much still at the first movers, is the people who are just like rethinking entirely how to do lifecycle marketing, like throwing no, like just because the status quo has been to do it this way, what does it look like to do all of that in an agent first world, an AI first world? And that one has been really interesting to me because I've actually seen a few of the teams like operating in this world, and the stuff that they're able to do and the speed that they're able to operate at is pretty nuts.
Yeah. That's, I think, where we are going, not only on this podcast, but just in general. So, like, I want to get to that. But going back almost to like team two for a moment, I think I'll just speak for myself. And I think a lot of folks, that's where I think a lot of people
Hmm.
sit. It doesn't mean they're, to be honest, I always think we're in a bit of an AI bubble. The fact that we're talking about this, that you're listening to this probably means you're now in the bubble. But the majority of folks are probably in like team one at this point,
Hmm.
just trying to figure it out and starting out. But I think
Which
there's
is
a
not
handful of
wrong.
folks. Yeah, nothing's wrong with that. And sometimes Apple just talked about the Siri AI recently, and there's some value, I think, into being a late mover. AI people have been banging on Apple for not and Siri for years, and rightfully so. Like they dropped the ball on it because they're almost like a late mover. They can roll it out in a way where they don't have the mistakes of the past couple of years or doing it in a way I think is intentional. And I think the same is true with folks that are maybe just starting out or even maybe starting out like next year or figuring out late. Like they can learn from the first movers, what works
Yeah.
well, what doesn't, and kind of bypass some of the murkiness. But I think a lot of us are in this like phase two or team two where we're starting to apply it to some of our workflows. It's helping analyze copy. For me, I'm using it even on like this podcast where it is researching on like a weekly basis potential guests for the pod. And I don't have to do that. I'm checking it, sending me recommendations. And so people are finding I find it very like use case specific where
Hmm.
you find that pain point, you think like how AI can help solve this. And then an agent, a skill, a Claude cowork, whatever that is, can go out and then help do that work for you.
Yeah, no, that's such a good way to put it, and it's interesting because for the first time ever, like we live in a world where you can just go build software, truthfully, to just solve like these hyper niche use cases that are only relevant to you. And like that's a really good way to be using AI to be building skills to solve like life cycle marketing use cases and things that maybe aren't a great use of your time. So like recently, we just someone in the community just shared this awesome Claude skill she made that automates all of her Monday reporting. She uses, I think it's the Braze MCP, and her reporting is the same every time. And she had to go pull all of this data. Now an agent just goes and does all of that, like sends it to a Slack channel every Monday, and she gets an hour of her time back. It's like that's great. I hate pulling data. So there's like there's lots of those types of
We all do. In terms of the reporting, that's the worst. I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but I imagine that's the worst part of like a lot of our jobs is that like mundane reporting part that just is
yeah.
tedious and time consuming.
Which maybe actually, if it's helpful for folks just to define, yeah, probably throw out like buzzwords and stuff, but like MCP, like what the heck
Yeah,
even
please.
is Claude and Braze MCPs? And okay, let me just caveat this: I'm not the MCP expert. I'm the marketer. This is how I understand practically the value it provides to me. But fundamentally, the way software has worked for years and years at this point is there are these things called APIs, application programming interfaces, and all it is just the doorway that systems talk to each other. So, you pull data out of the doorway or push data through the doorway, between systems. Now, with LLMs and agents like Claude and OpenAI, what's really cool is you can just point agents at tools and say, I want you to go do this thing. And if they've kind of set up the other tool like Braze in this instance has, and we even have one at Hightouch, their MCP configured, Claude can access that. You literally go into Claude. There's this view in the settings called connectors. You just connect through your account to whatever tool, and you can just have an agent go do stuff for you. So let's just say you don't know how to write a single line of SQL or anything to pull data. I don't know how to do that. I used to have to pester my boss all the time for data. And now in our analytics tool, not through the MCP, I literally just go in and say, pull me a report of this stuff in human language, and I can pull it
Yeah,
through.
Claude does great SQL. Like
Yeah,
I
Claude
don't
does
know how to
great
use it,
SQL.
but Claude is a professional at it.
So like you can, in the case of this Claude skill with Braze campaign readouts, you save that, you just type slash on your keyboard and it's just going to look at the new fresh data every single Monday. And you can just automate that to send to a Slack channel for yourself. And I don't know about you, but that type of work, like the boring operational side of marketing, like for me, what I love is running experiences. I love thinking about creative ideas. I love learning and shipping things faster. All of the red tape stuff that keeps me from doing that sucks the soul out of me.
It's that type of stuff that seems to save potentially hours every week or every month. And those are the things I think that people are finding like the early wins for
Hmm.
because these are the pain points. These are the use cases. Like this is pretty mundane. It's standardized like every week or every month, and it's mostly all data. So I'm going
Hmm.
to use that MCP, which I always say it's like a fancy word for integration. And you point Claude to and an agent to Braze or whatever it is and say like, hey, run this report, send it over to Slack and connect all these different systems.
Hmm.
which I think is super helpful. And that starts, you go from team two and you take this concept, I think, of connecting Claude or wherever AI tool to all these different systems and knowledge bases. And that's when I think you start, and correct me if I'm wrong, start making your way over to that third phase, that team three, where you're this full knowledge base that AI has access to. Is that right?
Yeah, I think directionally close. The only problem I would say, even in you'll find this with a lot of these AI tools, is the context windows run out pretty quick, and the context is kind of housed in that conversation. It has to reset at the next conversation. And the reality is, it's like it can look and read into all of these tools, but the way the not every tool has an MC. Not all of that data is readily in there. There's a lot of like nuanced things that, make a campaign come to life. So, there's I think AI is great at solving like these distinct parts of the workflow, like we're talking about, like reporting, building the content, helping you do more subject lines, all of that type of stuff. But where it gets difficult is like, what if you could just like rethink what marketing looked like entirely, like the shape of the work was entirely different. So instead of just like speeding up individual points in the workflow, it's just like you just had a new workflow. And that's one of the things we're excited here at Hightouch with, is just like, imagine, and I posted on this in the post I wrote recently, of just like this idea of kind of a new mental framework I proposed, where all of these things in some ways, like that context is housed everywhere, like a system that can look at all of it. And it's like, that could be Claude, that could be a CDP, that could be an MCP, but in some way, like a world where you as a marketer aren't having to start from scratch every time. The system already has the context. The system has the context of the reporting from the last campaign readout. The system has the understanding of all of the historical data of your customers. The system has the context of your brand. The system has the context of your copy. And the problem is like, if you do that in Claude today or something, you can put a lot of that in there, but it's not connected to, all of your underlying warehouse data. It's not necessarily getting smarter and smarter every time. It's helping you move faster. But what you want is a system that compounds, because otherwise the work is getting faster, but the system's not building on each other. And what I love to say is, like, every campaign that doesn't, get smarter technically makes the next one worse. If you're not capturing those learnings and training the underlying model to better understand what to do next time, it's like, hey, we sent this campaign to these customers and we used this creative type. It absolutely bombed. That needs to be saved somewhere. The model needs to have that context of knowing, that learning in the future without a human having to go in and drop, that report in each time. So the way we think about it here at Hightouch is like this composable context layer, which basically sits on top of all of your tools and pulls in and has access to that all the time. And this is like not at all a Hightouch pitch, but one of the things that makes us unique is we sit on top of the data warehouse. So we have access to all of that data at any time, which is the most valuable thing to run a campaign. Because you think about what a campaign is, it's really, a decision for your end user, a decision to do something for them. And all of those decisions have to be grounded in your data. They have to be grounded in your brand. And the data side is the hardest part to solve for. So if you're able to tie in everything that makes, your voice you, to your brand to the data, suddenly you've closed the loop between how everything about the customer to the actual experience side. And a lot of times those two things live separately. And it's like, for the first time ever, a marketer can kind of own everything outside of the brief too. They don't just create the brief and then hand it off to the team. You can work with all the teams to set up like what good looks like, what great looks
Yeah.
like in the system.
Yeah. I want to go back to a moment of what you said a few moments ago of just, if I'm in Claude now, I am setting up in a project, I'm sharing the brand book, I am sharing like examples of copy and past campaigns and things along those lines. So Claude, of course, is like trained on how we operate, what generally has worked well. But you're saying is like, that is a manual upload. That is a kind of a potentially one time thing where it has that knowledge base. but it's not continuously and compounding learning. So by connecting these various systems, or like it's sitting on top of it and being able to patch into it, it is constantly learning and iterating where you're not having to go back and re-upload stuff. It's always learning on itself, which then of course compounds over time.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm saying like a context layer built around the data warehouse, because you imagine a system built around the data warehouse, all of those learnings would be being fed back into the data warehouse to make the model smarter versus you having to kind of feed those in each time. And there are skills and things folks have built that Claude does get smarter each time. Like everything, operates on these proprietary, models, Google, Anthropic, and OpenAI. But, the specialized use cases and things. There's a reason that lawyers choose to use, Harvey AI over Claude. There's a reason that, marketing teams prefer to use an interface. It's like it takes a lot of work to actually set all this stuff up, yourself versus actually just being able to go and run the campaigns. There's a reason I pay for one of my friends to come exterminate my house. He's the expert exterminator. I'm not, so I don't want to have cockroaches. Cockroaches terrify me.
There's different types of bugs in Texas. So
Yeah,
in the
exactly.
South and in Texas, don't mess around with those.
So I think, yeah, part of the question too is just because you can go solve maybe every problem with AI, is that a great use of your time, all of the work it would take to set that up? I'm not saying not to do that. These are things to think about, build versus buy. But regardless, every marketer should be thinking in terms of AI native. Anything that is like the slightest bit repetitive, how can AI make this faster?
Right.
Anything, even creative, how can I make this better with AI? This idea of just like any problem you have now, it's just like my mind has been retrained to just think, how can I use AI for this?
All right. So all of this that you've been talking about, I feel like for the past few minutes, is a sample of like where you think it's going. This new concept of codified lifecycle marketing. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. And I can send you a link so you can share it with folks if they want to read the post. It's a beefy one and definitely worth bookmarking it for later if you can't read it. But yeah, I can give like the kind of the Spark Notes version. But the way I think about codified marketing, and I don't even know if I love the term. It's just the best thing I could come up with to encompass what's happening. The most important thing I think everyone knows at this point is that agents operate on context. The more context you give them, the better the outcomes there. And marketing has that same type of context. You think about what happened in software engineering. Folks don't write code anymore. My best friend is a data engineer, and he says he doesn't write code anymore. He just reviews code. An agent writes all of it for him. And the reason that worked is because we have years and years of GitHub repos and of structured data of, PRs and commits and tests and all of these different things that an agent can look at and just go, oh, okay, I know exactly how that works. Lifecycle marketing is the same way. We have years and years of emails. We have years and years of, messaging and all of this stuff that you would give a new hire when they come on, you can give to an agent. Now, obviously, you've got to go find that. You've got to go document that. But really taking all of your marketing knowledge wherever it lives and making it accessible to agents so they can operate on top of it directly. So, like, you think about I like this image. But like the life cycle marketers today, it's like this idea of ambition versus reality. Every quarter, they have all these things they want to do. They only get to a few ideas. I was literally talking to one of the largest QSRs in the country last week, and the woman I was speaking with, she said, she has a document where with all the experiments and campaigns she never gets to run, and she would love to run them. Like that's possible in an AI world, but really, it's like you want to run 27 campaigns, maybe you only get to run 2 that quarter. And I think lifecycle marketers die a little bit on the inside when they hear that.
Yeah, we will create a full list, and there's a lot of barriers to that. Sometimes
Hmm.
it's like audience size and things, but oftentimes it's just you can only move so fast. So there's so many different things going on, or there's just the next campaign to do that lives outside your flow, and there's just always something, or
Yeah,
there's a lot of red tape that gets in the way to get it out the door.
no, totally. So it's like, what if we move to a world where an agent could operate on every part of the lifecycle marketing workflow? So context, which means everything the agents know about your customers to make decisions. Adam only shops at 8:47 p.m. And he's only interested in this category. That would be really useful to know from a timing standpoint in the orchestration layer for an agent to know when to send that, push notification. Maybe we send it at 8:52. Content meaning like everything the agents can use to assemble on-brand experiences. Like I think we're all familiar. If you go into ChatGPT today or Gemini and you say, "Create me an ad," it'll look pretty good. But in order to actually publish something at an enterprise scale, and take it live, it has to be perfect, which means not hallucinating, which means, using every, minute detail about your brand down to the pixel. The stakes are really high in fintech, in healthcare, for publishing something that's wrong, and you're a public company on the stock exchange, and that gets picked up in a whole story run in PR, and then your stock is down the next day.
Right. You're not trusting AI with those final decisions.
Exactly, and we see that with Hightouch all the time. Is like folks use us to they input all of their brand guidelines, and then they build ads, but they're not generating AI. They're just using their pre-existing assets and assembling them together, which is really cool. So yeah, like a model and a framework, and like this is not specific to a technology or anything, but where agents kind of operate on each of these different layers, and all of these different layers compound. So that means uh, audience building and delivering your messages, like what the interaction looks like with the customer, that gets fed back into the context layer where the agents can then come up with new ideas for campaigns, and a marketer at every point of the step is reviewing this. It's like going in and your Monday morning, um I have these business goals from leadership. What are audiences I could be targeting? An agent can look through all of that data way better than you ever could and number crunch all of it and pull up some results. Oh, that's interesting. Tell me more about this audience. Why do you think I should run this campaign? And a human is in the loop at every part of that. But suddenly, there's no data ticket that has to get submitted. You can build your copy way faster and launch your campaign way, way quicker. And the way I like to think of it is like this old way versus the new world, which is in the old world, you created a brief. Then you send it over to your copy team and you wait a few days. And then you send it over to your legal team and you wait a few more days. And then, you have to QA test and ship everything, maybe through your ops team. And suddenly the campaign that you had in your mind looks quite different from the one that comes out, and the timeline is quite different. But what if, your copy team could insert their copy guidelines. Your legal team could insert those guidelines, and so could your creative team. Suddenly, you have an agent that can, assemble an initial draft, build a brief around the template that you already have. That's the same every time, but the audience changes, the creative changes. And a system can generate these things. And it's not to say, we're cutting out humans, we're replacing these teams. But instead of having all of these different cycle times back and forth and all of these different handoffs, what if, the copy team only had to review one time? What if the legal team only had to review one time? What if the creative team only had to review one time? And you as a marketer on Monday morning can hop in and it's like, what do I want to create today? And what do I want to ship by the end of the day?
Yeah. So conceptually, if I have this right, it is combining, seems like we have all these different systems from our ESP to our creative tool to any other tool that, of course, every single one is starting to have an AI component. So it's bringing those tools together, as well as agents being available to then do work in those tools, again, like a content tool. But then it's also like this second layer is going to be just having the system and an agent in place to be able to tap into the knowledge of legal
Hmm.
or creative or whatever. And so it's like it's combining systems and people knowledge all in one, and having this AI layer sit on top with a combination of agents doing part of the work.
Totally. And it's like that stuff is going to continue to get refined. Your creative, all of that might change in the next quarter. And the creative team is still going to have to create all of the stuff, that the marketing team is going to use. How you talk about your brand might change. What if I'm trying to think, like, what was that company last year? The software company with the scandal.
Astronomer?
astronomer. It's like, maybe how they speak about their brand completely changes after that. All of their copy guidelines change. Somebody has to come up with the new, for the system to act on. So like, I don't think the roles are going away. I just think that the way the old workflow, that we used to do is going to get much more tighter and better.
My brain goes to legal, I think, as potentially a good example, and maybe not legal folks may completely disagree, but it's saying if they put in, all right, here are the common use cases for what we do in marketing. Here are the things, the terms we can use, terms we can't use, all the like main parameters. You can have your agent
Hmm.
chat, agent, whatever, your AI tool tap into this knowledge base, be able to solve most of the main issues. So when it like passes over to legal, there's not back and forth. They know
Yeah,
like quick
it
check,
shouldn't be,
hey, this is good
the
to
whole
go.
thing redlined.
And then it opens up legal to touch on like unique use cases and like what's different versus all the little things that are like just pretty standard across the board that you don't have to waste those resources for. And
Totally.
I think that same goes for like legal, and then you take that over to your creative team, your
Yeah.
product marketers,
Well,
whatever
like,
it is, you can move a lot faster.
here's one of the use cases I really love with this new model: localization. Like, you as a lifecycle marketer, it's like, let's say you have 50 audiences of 50 people. In the old world, you would have to make one campaign for all of them. Like, but let's say, well, I want to adapt, creative by state, Texas, Wisconsin, whatever the state is. Your creative team is probably going to say that we're not giving you custom creative for each of that. But now it's like you could have the brand guidelines and then the underlying model behind it just swap out for Texas creative for each of those. For copy on an image, instead of submitting a ticket to your creative team, hey, we need to update this thing 50 times. That's like a really bad use of their time. But now you, as a lifecycle marketer, the cost is like marginally zero to do that. And the experience is infinitely better for the customer.
Hey, I'm all for that. This concept is something I feel like over the past couple weeks, I've heard in a couple of different spots, and it seems like I don't know if this is fully where it's going, but it does seem over the past 2 years or so, things are shifting. We don't know how like things are going to land and where it's like where things are going to land at like at the end of it all, but it's starting to seem like, hey, the breadcrumbs are starting to appear and starting to line up, and we're starting to kind of have a better idea of like where it's going. It may not be fully set yet,
Mhm.
but we're starting to get eyesight of kind of where it's going and where it may land soon.
Totally. And I said that in my article. I think at the end is anyone who tells you they know exactly how AI is going to play out, I wouldn't listen to them. I think directionally right now, this is what a lot of folks are saying in lifecycle marketing, outside of lifecycle marketing, is how do we give more context to agents to act on? And if there's a way to build a system around that compounds and gets smarter each time, that would be an ideal state.
Yeah, it's we are still such in the early days of AI. We're going to look back at this a couple of years from now and
Maybe a
laugh.
couple
It's just
weeks.
that's fair, but I think, like, when you look back at even, like, the early 2010s and the 2000s, like, you laugh at, like, what the internet was like then, and how it basically wasn't mature, and we'll, I think, look back at this era and think the same thing, and we don't have any idea what it's gonna look like. We're just all kind of figuring it out in the process, and, yeah, things things change. Even a month from now, we could look back and be like, "Alright, this is very different than it was before." But, all you can do is go with what we got this time. It's been fascinating to hear about, at least in theory, of where things are going. Likely in 6 months, we could be proven very wrong, or maybe proven right. We'll find out. But in the meantime, we have some lightning round questions to close it out. You ready?
Mhm.
All right. So first is just like coming from the outside. I guess to a certain degree, you've been ingrained in a life cycle, but you're not a life cycle person yourself. What do you think is misunderstood, overlooked, or maybe a common misconception about email or life cycle marketing?
Yeah, the big one is just like, I think we think of lifecycle marketing as just communication to customer, of just like send the customer XYZ thing. And it's not, it's the relationship with the customer, like brand equity with them. And you need to treat it with the same rigor that you treat it, your product with. Because I heard this great quote this one time is, what is it? Loyalty is gained in drops and lost in buckets. It takes droplets to gain a loyal customer, but like they'll change on you immediately. Like we take it for granted as brands that our customers don't owe us anything and they can leave tomorrow. But when we see the engagement and we see, the revenue to them, we start to think like we're owed that instead. And we need to be thinking, that's not an implicit thing.
Yeah. Yes, loyalty can end at any
Trust,
moment.
it's trust and gained in droplets and lost in buckets.
That's a great quote. I think that is
Not mine.
one of the terrifying things about Lifecycle and email, because like you can't hit the undo button.
No,
If you send something out, it's like you hope everything is correct because you could, and oftentimes if you miss something, it's like something small and it's not a big deal.
I just did
And
that
hopefully you don't
yesterday.
miss it. But the great fear is like you miss something entirely and you lose that trust in a minute. Hopefully that doesn't happen to anybody here or that listens to this. All right, next question. You have a bunch of Legos behind you. I got to ask, like, what's your favorite Lego set?
Man, this is like a completely another story, but yeah, I've been a Lego fan my whole life. Favorite Lego set? There's a couple. One is I actually you can't see them behind me, but I'm a huge Lord of the Rings guy, so I own every single Lord of the Rings Lego set ever made outside of the Comic Con exclusive stuff. But my favorite one, actually, wait, no, I can grab it. I'll show it. This one. So it's a 2003 original Mos Eisley pod race, or not pod race, Cantina sealed like in the box. One of the first Lego sets my parents ever bought me as a child. So I keep that one in the box because it's nostalgic to me.
Nice. So that's Star Wars, but you're also like the big Lord of the Rings as well?
Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. Yeah,
Okay. Are you going to get I just saw the reveal for the Minas Tirith.
I already bought it. Yep.
I
They
already
sucker
bought it.
me in. Great life cycle marketing. They do gifts with purchases because they know, collectors buy that. If you don't buy on like the, first couple of days, you don't get the gift with purchase.
Okay. They're on it. Lego's got it down. All right. Final question for you before we get you out of here. Just like current binges or our favorites. Any like great TV show, podcast, book, movie? Like what have you been into recently?
Yeah. So I'm not like a huge movie guy. I'm not a huge podcast guy, but there is one podcast. When I do listen to it, it's very, very rare because I don't listen to a lot of stuff with work. I'm just too in the weeds and it distracts me. I do a lot of writing and research and reading. But there's a great podcast called How I Built This
I
by,
love how I built this.
okay. Yeah, it's one of the only podcasts I listen to. But what have I up to or binging? This is going to sound really bad. It's not the normal, but I've been spending a ton of time on Claude, like outside of work.
Nothing's wrong with that. Anything unique? Any like personal stuff you got working on?
I've been tinkering with like trying to build an app, so that's been fun. But yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. All right. And okay, I got it wrong. This is the last question before we get you out of here. What's you teased in your recent article about codified marketing that there's something big coming up in July. Anything more you can share there?
Yeah, it's a community like only webinar, and we're going to be doing with folks. So I don't know like when this is going live, but one of the things we think about is like we want to do things only for the community. And so it's actually not something that's publicly available to other folks, but we're going to sit down and kind of do a live workshop talking about a lot of the stuff that we just talked about, like what the new way of working looks like, and actually sharing a private preview to a new product we're launching here at Hightouch, which is redefining the way kind of lifecycle marketing works. So the hope is to actually show folks like what an agentic lifecycle marketing campaign looks like to build from end to end, which is really exciting, and then leave time for Q&A. So yeah, the hope is they'll walk away with kind of practical AI stuff, that they can deploy, hear what folks are saying. We talk to CMOs and lifecycle teams, all over the world all the time. And then also just see like, what does this new world potentially look like? Not at all, selling high touch, but just giving folks kind of a sneak peek at the future. Because regardless of it's us, I think the world is heading in this direction.
Nice. Well, I like it. Something to tune into. I'm sure I will when we get to that point. All right, Luke, where can we follow you?
LinkedIn, Lifecycle Leaders, that would be the number one spot if you want to get these journey breakdowns, if you want to know what brands are doing in life cycle. And I'm pretty responsive. Folks, I try and do meetings with folks in the community all the time just because I want to hear what folks are thinking, what I can be surfacing that, they would like to learn more on. So just shoot me a DM.
Yeah, definitely do. Check out Luke on LinkedIn or check him out on lifecycleleaders.com. Luke, thanks for joining. And if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you leave a review, give us 5 stars if you liked it. And again, thanks for joining. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, thank you so much.